Live Fit Podcast, episode 116, How to Conquer Your Food Addiction with Megan Peterson.
If someone's addicted to chocolate in many ways and many facets, it could definitely be something similar to if somebody's addicted to substances, because chemically in the brain, a lot of those things work congruently or very similarly, meaning I've struggled with weight for most of my life. And I can definitely tell you that when I have a stressful day, I will resort to a piece of chocolate, or for me, it was more of the carbs. I was always a carb addict, so to speak. So I would get the massive plate of pasta or French fries. And when you eat it, you get that feeling. And that's your dopamine. That is absolutely your dopamine going, oh, thank God you gave me this food. It feels so good.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson, your guide to better health. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I especially thank you for listening because this is a special show today. This is my 4-year anniversary. It was 4 years ago today, tonight, that I was sitting in this very chair, in this very office, starting my first episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Today is the day after Thanksgiving. I set up my equipment, wrote out a quick script, rehearsed it, got the nerves out, edited it, and put it all together and published it the first week of December on iTunes. I was so excited. I had no idea how long I would do it. I just wanted to give it a shot. I read a book, I looked into it, did a little bit of studying, thought, hey, I can do that. I have some background in recording, I have some background in editing, I have some background, a little bit of everything that I need to do this, and so I thought I'd give it a shot. I thought, well, I think a dozen episodes would be a pretty good way to really see if I like it, and here we are. 116 episodes later. Well, as you can tell, it worked out because I'm still here, and I love speaking with experts in their health-related niches. It's really cool. I learned something, you probably learned something, and maybe, just maybe, you learned something that helps you improve your life. And that's really what it's all about. You're all here to hear how you can live fit and healthy and free for the rest of your life. Get rid of those chains. Get rid of those burdens that are holding you down. Now, my guest today, Megan Peterson, is an addiction counselor who also had a dream. She wanted to help people in remote locations, people that weren't face-to-face right in front of her. So she put together a company called Second Chance Counseling Services. Now, she specializes in drug and alcohol counseling, but as you'll hear in this interview, she can parlay that into pretty much any kind of addiction, including food addiction. So we're going to hear about that in just a few minutes. Remote counseling, or telemedicine, provides a flexible and discreet counseling service to all 50 states at a fraction of the price of face-to-face. And hey, it's way more convenient. So let's hear what Megan has to say, and hopefully she will help you out too. And please let me know. I love listener feedback. Hi, Megan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, and I'm really pleased to have you on the show because this is a topic that I haven't really covered before. You are an addiction counselor, and I talk about it a lot with my clients and patients because a lot of people are addicted to food or a certain type of food, and it's something I don't really have a lot of experience with other than that direct experience. So I don't have an academic background in counseling. So that's why I wanted to hear what you have to say. Now, I realize your specialty is not food addiction. You deal more in drug addiction, but I know there's a crossover. So before we get into all that, can you give us a brief background on how you got to be where you are right now?
Sure. So, I mean, I was a drug and alcohol counselor for many years and, kind of went through different jobs and outpatient facilities. And then I kind of fell into actually this role because it wasn't necessarily something that I studied while I was in college. And counseling became very natural to me. So I just kind of fell into it. I have a great passion for helping people and, helping them find their way. And I ended up working for a pharmaceutical company, which that's the other side of this. And working with them in the beginning, I mean, it was great. It was a wonderful experience. I had a lot of growth in working for that company and in that industry, and it taught me a lot. And what it also did was it allowed me other opportunities to see who I was as a person and how I really missed that personal contact with patients and how I really wanted to get back into the field to see if I couldn't make a difference. So it was one of those things where I ended up leaving the pharmaceutical industry, and I saw a lot of things happening in the world. For instance, we're an incredibly busy society. We're on the move all the time. People want something fast. They want it now. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, as a therapist, and most therapists can say this, you could absolutely write a book on excuses on why patients can't make it to therapy. So I'm like, well, what are some of those excuses? And some of those excuses is that, it's travel, it's family, it's jobs. And some of them are really legitimate, but sometimes they also put them in the way of really getting therapy. So I'm like, well, what if we alleviate those excuses? Like, what if we created an online platform where patients literally can get therapy when they need it in the comfort of their own home, or at lunchtime when they're in the office, or in the morning before their kids wake up. Like, you alleviate all those barriers and all those excuses. So literally onus is on the patient. I think that's a big deal. I think it's a big deal no matter what addiction you are fighting through, that once you put onus on yourself and you hold yourself accountable, that's when change can start to happen and be made.
So you do remote counseling, and you just alluded to that a little bit. And how does that work?
So everything is done on a secure HIPAA-compliant platform, but it's done through video. So a lot of people, equate it or would, take a look at it as something like FaceTime or Skype, because you're doing a video face-to-face therapy session with somebody. So it would be similar to that platform. However, this one is secure and HIPAA compliant, and it's all self-contained within one system. So all note-taking, all messages, all correspondence, everything is done within one system to protect the privacy of the patient, and make sure that they could really go out and seek the therapy that they need. Because that's another thing, is that there's there's still a horrible stigma about addiction out there, that some patients don't want to go to see a therapist because what happens if their girlfriend sees them or somebody from their community sees them? Then people start to talk or ask questions. So some people that will absolutely stop them dead in their tracks from getting the help that they need, just from the standpoint of the fear of being judged.
Right. How long have you been doing this online, remotely?
So I did it personally for about 2 years before I took the company nationally. And nationally, we've been doing it right now for about 9 months.
Nice. How's it been going?
Good. It's been going really well. Of course, being a business owner, you always want to see things happen faster than maybe what they should be. But then you take a look and you're like, no, they're right where they need to be. So I think the challenges with any addiction is the acknowledgement first that you have a problem, and then, getting people to the point where they're ready to make a change. So that's the hurdle. Once we get over that hurdle, then everything kind of falls in line.
Well, I see this all the time with food and exercise, and I completely agree with you that is the biggest hurdle, and taking onus for their condition and their situation, and making the hard decisions and the hard choices and these hard changes that are a little bit uncomfortable, because face it, that's why they're doing what they're doing. They're living the way they are because it's more comfortable than the other way. But how can you help them get there, or do you just say, hey, I'm here when you're ready?
I mean, kind of both. So sometimes, let's say, sometimes patients are self-motivated to come and they're like, hey, I am ready to make a change. Can you help me? Other times it may be family. family kind of pushing and giving that nudge saying, hey, you've got a problem. We're acknowledging it. You need to go get some help. So our kind of motto is that as long as patients are willing to put in the work, we're willing to put in the work with them. So as long as there's a little bit of, motivation there, and it could just be a little, because believe me, I've dealt with just a little, we're really ready to sit down and have those conversations to move the needle to wherever we need to move it to.
Gotcha. That's nice. Now, we talked a little bit pre-show about food addiction, and though it's not your specialty, if you were having a conversation with somebody who said that they were, well, let's say addicted to chocolate, and
Sure.
when they eat chocolate, it sets up a whole snowball effect of eating more chocolate and eating other things and really lousy eating, whereas if
Right.
they completely abstain, they can maintain their weight really consistently for years and years. So
Right.
let's say you're speaking with this person. What sorts of words of wisdom would you impart on them?
Well, so we do this now. Because our program, the way that we treat addiction is, yes, patients are coming to us with primary substance abuse, but obviously with primary substance abuse, a lot of the times there are other things that go hand in hand, and we do believe in treating the full patient. So a lot of the times we are asking those patients, what are you eating? How are you sleeping? How are you feeling? Those types of things, because it absolutely does have a huge factor in how you feel and how your body, I guess, presents itself. So, if someone's addicted to chocolate in many ways and many facets, it could definitely be something similar to if somebody's addicted to substances, because the chemically in the brain, a lot of those things work congruently or very similarly, meaning, I would be one of those, that person. I've struggled with weight for most of my life. And, I can definitely tell you that when I have a stressful day, I will resort to, a piece of chocolate, or for me, it was more of the carbs. I was always a carb addict, so to speak. So I would get the massive plate of pasta or French fries. And when you eat it, you get that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your dopamine. That is absolutely your dopamine going, oh, thank God you gave me this food. It feels so good.
Yes.
So really, you get the same thing when you take chemicals and you put other chemicals in your body. So what you need to do is you need to get to the root of why you feel like you need to do it to begin with and what situation you're in, and then learn different coping mechanisms and different coping skills or different things that you can do so that you're not going to the French fries or to the chocolate or to the Red Bulls or, the other things to help sustain you for the day. For some people, it's coffee. It's interesting. You'll go to AA meetings, and in some AA meetings, I would, go in and participate or help facilitate. And, people are in recovery, obviously, from alcoholism, and they're not drinking alcohol anymore, but they're coming in with those big Joe cups of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's like, okay, you're not drinking, but let's really talk about what what are you getting from drinking that much coffee then too. Let's talk about the caffeine and what the effects that it has to do with your body. So I think, as far as food goes, we talk to people that it's always about moderation. If you want a piece of chocolate and it's just because you'd like to have a little piece of chocolate and because it tastes good, then fine. But you need to know why you're eating it to begin with. And you also need to know the aftermath of the effects of putting it in your system. And I think that's the other, really challenge that we have today in society is that everybody's looking for a quick fix. Everybody's looking for that magic pill. Everybody's spending money on cosmetic surgery because it's quick and it can get rid of the fat on my system because I have a wrinkle here, a wrinkle there. We don't want to put in the work. And then we don't know what's going into our system. Even from a medical standpoint, anytime you go to a doctor or anytime that you talk to somebody, you are your own advocate, and you need to be your own advocate. You need to ask questions as far as, what am I taking? Why am I taking it? What does this do to my system? And a lot of us don't do that anymore. We get a prescription and we take it because someone told us to. And that's a big problem. Even, gosh, my 8-year-old, it's funny because we'll listen to some of the ads on TV, as far as like some of the pharmaceutical ads. And in the beginning, it tells you all the good things that it does. And in the end, it tells you all the side effects. And my 8-year-old, right, even came into me the one day and goes, gosh, why would you take that?
Yeah, my
So
kids say that all the time too.
it's one of those things where it's like, come on, people, if the kids are onto it and they're 8, we need to be a little bit more cognizant about what we're doing and the choices that we're making.
Now, you said you work with the whole person. Can you give an example of how you would do that?
Sure. Well, I had a patient not that long ago that was recovering from opiate addiction and fairly new. And we were having a session and he started telling me about these awful migraines that he was getting throughout the day. And he worked full time. And, at first we talked about, okay, are you taking your medication correctly? Obviously biochemically, he understands what the medication is doing for him, because we've already gone over that. And then I started asking him, okay, talk to me a little bit about what you're eating. What are you eating today? What does that day look like for you? Have you had migraines in the past? And he said, sure, I have about 10 Red Bulls a day and I don't eat much. And I'm like, okay, that's,
wow.
I think I know where you're getting headaches from. So, first of all, he wasn't really eating a sustained diet. So he wasn't taking calories from, good, like lean protein or vegetables. He wasn't taking it from any of those
getting
places.
It from sugar.
He was getting it from sugar. So I'm like, okay, let's step back a little bit. Let's talk about, what do you think that you're getting from drinking this? And let's talk about what it's doing to your body biochemically. And then let's talk about why, this could be, not saying it is, but it very well could be why you're getting headaches. So then it was after we acknowledge all that, okay, let's come up with a game plan. How can we start to minimize some of the drinks that you're taking in a day? So let's cut that down maybe in half, and in between there, replace it with water. So that obviously, because again, when you take that away from somebody very quickly, that can really exacerbate a headache as well. So it's like, all right, let's make a game plan where for the next week, we're going to do, Red Bull water, and let's see how that goes. Cause we're going to start to try to cut down. And in between there, I want you to take small snacks with you. And I want you to eat those small snacks so that you can maintain your blood sugar throughout the day. So you're not getting those high and low spikes.
Now, on the subject of Red Bull and energy drinks in general, I get the question fairly frequently, are they bad for you? And I've drank a couple to try them out, several different kinds, just to see what the fuss is all about. And personally, I think they taste like poison, and I really don't see any redeeming qualities about them. Even the lift I got from them was a very unsettling lift. It wasn't as smooth and clean as, let's say, a cup of tea or coffee. Right. So what do you know about the healthful properties? Let's say a person's drinking one a day. Is there a reason to curtail that too? Do you know anything about it?
I don't know much about energy drinks other than the fact that from a clinical perspective, and this is just me talking personally, I don't see a need for them. But then that also goes back to a lot of like medication, a lot of like substitution. Like, why do we feel, and this is just, again, me talking, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around why we always feel like we need something else. Like, if you feel like you need that drink, then let's really talk about what are you lacking and where else might we get that from rather than going to that drink. Because again, studies, and pick up any studies that you see anywhere talk about that, water is the best thing to drink. And I understand that can be very challenging, especially if that's the only thing that you're drinking. But that is the best thing to drink. So if you're drinking, energy drinks because you have a lack of energy, is it because you're not sleeping well at night? Well, is it you're not sleeping well at night because you had these drinks and you're restless by the time you go to bed too? So again, it's like this, encompassing circle where I think that before you even go, I've tried them myself. I had one my whole life. I didn't like it. I actually didn't like the way it made me feel. I never had it again. Right. And I did it just because it was like, what's the fuss? But I think that's the problem though, too. Again, I'm human, so I'm not very different than, majority of people in society here. I succumbed to it because I was like, okay, I want to try it. We actually, I know when it was, we were on a 13-hour drive. And I was like, I'm tired and I want to see what all the fuss is. So I'm going to try one of these energy drinks. And, oh my gosh, it made me feel horrible And I was like, I'm never going to try that again. But I wanted to try it because it was like kind of like all the rage of like, oh, well, everybody else is doing it. But I think that's also the problem is that, looking back at it, I didn't need to try it and I shouldn't have tried it because just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that I had to either.
True.
So I think that's like the first hurdle. Yeah.
Well, I would kind of go back to, back up why you tried it, and the same reason I did, because I wanted to know. I can't, when somebody asks me about it, if I have no knowledge of it, I can't give any kind of answer at all. But since I have tried probably three different kinds, I do have somewhat of an answer or an experience. Right.
That's true. That's a good point. I got a massive headache and felt completely lethargic. It did the opposite for me. So it actually like made me more sleepy than what it did if it was supposed to bring me up. And you know what? But that's a really good point, because for me and for a lot of people though too that take, other types of, I guess, narcotics and or medicines and or whatever the case may be, different things work differently for different people. So, I was like diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age. I am that type of person where I'm on the go all the time. I am definitely that person that when I was younger, they had me on, some of those other types of medications to help calm me down. So again, the case in point, Red Bull or the other types of energy drinks that are out there are not going to bring me up. They're going to start to take me down because biochemically that's what it does to me. But a lot of people don't know that or don't, realize that.
Well, it's kind of a catch-22 also. You have to drink the Red Bull in the morning because you didn't get good sleep last night, because you drank it too late in the day the night before, etc. What I wanted to ask you now is something that I've heard several times before, but have never really pursued it. And since my education isn't in this field per se, what do you have to say about people who have, quote unquote, an addictive personality, that they can become addicted to anything and that they seem to always need to be addicted to something?
Sure. I mean, I definitely think that is a real thing. It has to do a lot with impulse, like impulsivity, like if you need it now. And just as far as the society goes, we're a very impulsive society to begin with at this point. If we want something, you could pretty much get it, without too much effort anymore, unfortunately. So the other side of that, though, is it's definitely biochemically. We barely know how the brain works at this point. I mean, we've just started touching on how the brain works and, what the receptors do in there and how they react to different chemicals and how you're predispositioned to things because of your parents and then their parents and other people before you. So I think it has to do a little bit of both. I think it has to do biochemically, how you're chemically made up within your DNA structure. But I also think that society sometimes, and the way that you're brought up, and different things that you're exposed to, help acerbate that impulsivity and need to have things now.
Do you deal with tobacco addiction?
You know what? We would be more than happy to deal with that or help deal with nicotine and things like that. It's typically on our platform, a lot of the patients that are coming on are opiates, cocaine, methamphetamine, other, harder substance of a drug than nicotine. But again, nicotine or tobacco, again, when you get really down to it, it's the same type of chemical component.
Sure.
That you have a receptor site and you're filling that receptor site with a drug. And then when that drug detaches from that receptor site, that's when you get the headaches and that's when you need the extra cigarette, or that's when you need to, to put the dip in your mouth again. Like the same type of concept. It all has to do with your brain and how things work on your brain. But a lot of people don't look at that before they start trying these substances. They don't know how these things affect their brain on a biochemical level. And it's important. It's really important to know how those things work and how they can affect you.
Can you simply get rid of an addiction? Won't that leave a vacuum or a void? Should there be a replacement of some sort? And I certainly don't mean another harmful substance, but
sure.
Can you simply get rid of it?
you know what? It really depends on the person. There is no one size fits all anymore. There are people that will absolutely swear and tell you that you should be able to stop opiate dependence on your own and go cold turkey. And there are absolutely people that have done that, and kudos to them. But there are people that have struggled for 15, 20 years with that addiction and haven't been able to do it and needed the assistance of medical assisted treatment to, yes, be able to go in and fill that receptor site and have that receptor site filled while they learn certain coping mechanisms in the meantime. So there's, that's something that we continue to research and continue to take a look at because we just don't have enough knowledge on that yet.
What do you think about the opioid epidemic?
I think it's horrible. I think it's horrible, and it's not getting any better. If anything, it just continues to get worse. It doesn't bear a certain face. It affects everybody on all walks of life. I mean, if anything, I hope what it's doing is, if anything, I hope that people are acknowledging that it's, addiction is not what we thought it was before. Addiction before we thought was like the person on the side of the street that was, struggling and asking for help. And that's not the case anymore. I mean, addiction is affecting everybody on all walks of life. It affects people from, the wee ages of 13, to, 70 years old. You can have a 70-year-old woman who never had an addiction before, ended up getting surgery, got prescribed narcotics, didn't realize what they were going to do, and then inadvertently got addicted to them. So it affects everybody on all walks of life.
About 2 years ago, I had a surgery, and I was dumbfounded with the amount of opioids they gave me. They gave me a bottle of 90, and they said take 1 to 2 every 4 hours.
Right.
And I did the math on that, and even taking the minimal dose, that would have me popping pills pretty much all day, every day for 3 weeks or something like that. And I thought, that has got to be a recipe for addiction.
Yeah, I mean, by that time you're done because your receptor sites are already so used to it that you are absolutely going to see some effects when you stop taking those. Yeah, absolutely. It's scary, and it's not, I don't want to place blame on anybody individually. I don't know if you know kind of how this whole thing started, but, originally the reason that we had such an epidemic is because, doctors before wouldn't necessarily treat pain in the way that they do right now. Patients would come in and say, I have this excruciating back pain and I don't know why. And doctors would say, okay, well, I'm looking at the scans and I'm not going to prescribe you anything because I don't see where either. And then the patient would leave in pain. Well, what ended up happening was a lot of doctors were getting sued because they weren't treating the patient's pain. So then what we came out with this, happy face, sad face pain scale. And now it's like, okay, you need to treat the patient's pain based on this pain scale. So now, doctors, came in and said, okay, I need to treat the pain, even though, I may not be seeing it. Clearly you're in pain and that's what you're expressing to me. So I'm going to give you this. And that's where the floodgates just opened. They just opened. Yeah. I mean, I've had surgeries as well, and I've definitely taken pain medication, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. There, again, there are some people that it doesn't like after I was like you, after like the second or third day, I was like, I think that this is making me feel worse. I'd rather go back to my Motrin, and it has an anti-inflammatory in there. I'd rather just take that. So, but other people, they take it and they're like, oh, I feel so good now. And, it affects everybody differently. And that's not something that's typically discussed, though. You're given medication, but it's not discussed, all the ramifications and all the other things that come with it. And again, you could be in your 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, not ever had to take a pain medication before, not know that you could be predispositioned to it. And you seriously do get a legitimate thing that happens to you where you need to be on these, and then it just takes off from there. So it's really scary. It's really scary.
And there's also this attitude that more is better. And I was taught to take the least of something that I need, use the least of something that I need, whether I'm cleaning dishes or taking an aspirin for a headache. If one aspirin tablet will get rid of my headache, why should I take 2?
Right.
And so
you're right.
that's kind of my philosophy with all this. Now, really quick, I only have a few more minutes here, but do you have any solutions for the opioid epidemic? Does it start with the prescribing physicians, or is there something else?
I mean, I think there's a lot more education, first of all. Prescribing physicians do need to be trained, and they are starting to incorporate this now, because typically when you get out of medical school, I think you only have like a couple hours of training of addiction and what addiction is with patients, which
Oh, wow.
that can't be anymore. So I know that they're starting to incorporate more things in there to talk about, addictive personalities and, patients that are suffering, where is the first line of defense and then where should the last line of defense be? So yes, it starts there, but it also starts, education in general and more education from patients themselves being a self-advocate. You need to ask questions before you put something into your body,
Very
less
nice.
is more.
I like that. Be your own advocate. I grew up in a time where, and prior to me also, I think this was the case, the mentality that the doctor is in charge of your body. And if you don't
Yes.
feel right, you go to the doctor and say, hey, doc, what's up? And he gives you something or does something or tells you whatever it might be.
Right.
He has some sort of solution for you. And it's really not the case anymore. And I
No.
don't advocate that being the case, because each person knows themselves better than anybody else does, even better than your mother.
Right. Well,
Um,
but not only that, but remember back in the day when we went to the doctor knew you, he knew your mom, he knew your
Yeah,
dad, he knew
yeah.
your family, and you would go in there and he would spend a half hour with you and he would ask you all these questions. Heck, he would even come to your house if needed to. We
Right.
don't live in that age anymore. We live where doctors are underneath, other practices or other facilities where they have to see patients every 10 minutes, like on the money.
Mhm.
So you don't have a lot of time to look at an overall patient and really spend a lot of time with them and ask questions, because they're there to treat the problem and basically fix the problem and then go on to the next patient. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to be. And if you can't do it, then take somebody else with you that can.
And it's also important to have a support system. So I know you're big on that with the
Absolutely.
opioid addiction or any of these addictions.
With anything, yes, absolutely. You need to have a support system put in place. You need to have, people there that can advocate for you and help you. I have a support system. I shared with you earlier before we started talking, I just recently lost a lot of weight. I have support system. My family is my support system. And it's funny, my 11-year-old is my biggest support system, because she's like as tall as me and almost as strong, and she'll fight that I don't put a chip in my mouth. So, she is my biggest support system and telling me like, Mommy, are you sure you want to do that? Like, are you really making a good decision? And you need somebody like that. You need someone to help you that knows the struggles that you're going through and can help you, along the way. That's huge. No matter if it's food or addicted substances, no matter what it is, you need to have somebody that's not going to judge you and that's not going to put their own views on you, right? That's
Right.
non-judgmental, but that's going to be there to support you and help you in making better decisions, because that's what it comes down to, is you need to train yourself to make better decisions.
And part of that, when there's any sort of change in your behavior, in your plan, whether you want to, eat less chocolate or no chocolate or quit drugs or cigarettes or whatever, and part of having the support system is having a plan. So many people just kind of hope that their behavior will change. Well, I'm trying to quit smoking. And so you ask them what their strategy is, and they say, well, I'm hoping that I won't want as many tomorrow as I did today.
Yeah, no, you have to set a goal. Like even like with myself, with weight loss, I set a goal. I said, okay, and it's a tangible goal too. Don't just say that you're going to come out the gate and you're going to lose 50 pounds. That's
Yeah.
not realistic. It's like, okay, today I'm going to start meal planning and I'm going to make sure that I just drink water and I don't have, sodas or pop or whatever the case may be. And then it's setting daily goals for yourself every day. Even exercise, people do this. Today I'm going to get up and I'm going to move 30 minutes. And I'm going to commit myself to moving 30 minutes and then not worry about the next day, and the next day it's like today.
Yep,
You only have today, right? We hear that a lot, but we don't live by that. You really only have today. So make small, tangible goals for today and make sure that you meet them. And you know what? The other side of that, though, too, is that if you don't beat yourself up about it, because typically that's the other side of it, is that people will sabotage themselves and say, oh, you know, I had that pizza, or I had that cake, or I relapsed on substances yesterday and I shouldn't have, so forget it. Everything's out the window. No, we're human. We're human. We make mistakes. We pick up the pieces and we start again tomorrow, because again, you only have, you know, today. So, you know, today was not a great day. That's fine. Let's move on to tomorrow. What are we going to do differently tomorrow? How are we going to be better tomorrow? And that's where you need to do it.
My example of that try again, and this goes really well with the name of your website, Second Chances, is that when a child is learning how to walk, they fall down. And then they get back up again, and then they fall down again. They get back up, and they fall down. They get up, they fall down, etc. And if you've ever seen a toddler learning how to walk, it's painful. It's agonizing. I don't know why my son doesn't have brain damage. The amount of times that he fell and whacked his head on the floor or something else. Or maybe he does. I'm kidding. Anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there really quick. And now, Megan, how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. I mean, they can go to our website, obviously, which is www.secondchancecounseling.com, or they can call us. I mean, you know, we believe in human interaction. So if you call the number, you're going to get a human on the other end that's going to be able to help you and kind of guide you through this process. Because that's really what we want to do, is we want to start to create change. We want to start to create more access for patients to be able to have, you know, therapy when they need it.
And I will have the links to your website and your phone number on my show notes page at livefitpodcast.com. And Megan, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at livefitpodcast.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and always remember to live fit.